Guys, can we agree that traditional boxer briefs have been long overdue for an upgrade? Well, on a hot summer day, a U.S. soldier on his second tour of duty in Iraq had an epiphany. Why not put 3 separate compartments in your underwear to keep everything downstairs separate, cool, and comfortable? It wasn't long after Sheath was born, and this innovative design redefined men's boxer briefs. Sheath underwear reduces skin-on-skin contact, which minimizes the buildup of heat and sweat. Sheath underwear are the holy grail of underwear. Guys, you need camo. You ever been out in the woods and you just gotta go? You don't want to be seen? And what about these? When I put these on, I feel like an Egyptian king. But you don't have to take my word for it. Go test them out for yourself. Our friends at Sheath sponsored this video, and they're also giving you the opportunity to try them out for 20% off. All you got to do is click on the link below. Just make sure to use the promo code Chael at checkout. Or go to sheathunderwear.com/Chael and save 20% today. Who can beat Islam? What do you guys think? Because whatever answer you have, the answer had better be Volkanovski, or you're going to say, I don't think anybody can beat Islam, but Volkanovski can do the closest. And the only reason I say it had better, I don't mean that to scold you. I'm saying as a whole, that should be our answer because that's who's going to be next. That's what number one contender is supposed to mean. Number one contender is a very coveted spot that is supposed to be representative. A guy who has clearly shown he can beat the field. He can beat all the rest of the boys. There's just one question left. Can he beat the guy? What do you think? And I will share with you, I think Islam looks close to perfect. His style's a little bit dull. For me, that's a compliment. The oohs and the ahs, right? If you have moves that are dynamic, if you do a technique and you get oohs and ahs from the crowd, you're probably not a champion. It's very rare. It is the basics that wins championships. A guy who is very basic, who does not get called dynamic, who does not do techniques that go ooh and ah from the crowd, is generally at the top of the throne. And I think if you go look at every single weight class, both genders, I don't believe you'll disprove the statement that I just made. In fact, the more basic that Adesanya became because he had to, because he's fighting better guys, the less oohs and the ahs that he got, the less rounds he's been losing. Just by example. Now, when it comes to who can beat Islam, right? I'm also as interested in who can force Islam to do something different. I feel that that's a win. For going on 3 years now, I've never believed that beating Valentina Shevchenko meant that you take the belt away and you give her a loss. I've never thought that. I've thought winning a round. And prior to winning a round, I'll back up. I thought going 5 rounds, making it the distance is a win. If you can go the distance and you can steal a round, that's a win. If you get stopped in the 4th, but you won the 2nd, that's a win. If you get in a wrestling exchange and you come out on top, that's a win. I've said it, but I think that you guys agree with me. Like, there's some people that are so dominant. So as it pertains to Islam, aside from taking his belt away, who can stop him from taking them down? If we had somebody and they fought all night with Islam and stopped Islam from getting on top, could we agree that that would be a victory to some degree? Because I don't think that Islam can go take Michael Chandler down. That's my belief. And a takedown where you don't hold the position, I'm counting in the same category, whether I should or not. I believe that Michael Chandler could stop the takedown. Moreover, if Chandler slips and goes down, I believe that Chandler can get back up with his feet, turn and face him, and start back in neutral. I believe that. I could be wrong, but that's why we tune in. That's why we have the guys fight. I'm just offering you one scenario. As we start to back out and we start to come through this thing, okay, there's 2 lessons that you have to learn here, and neither have to do with Islam. as you're trying to break down who would be closest, who would give Islam the hardest time, as you start to deduce and you start to break that down, you start going through the Gaethjes and you start talking about the Poiriers and you start bringing the Chandlers into it. I'm not convinced that when you get to your final analysis, you're not going to come to the conclusion Charles Oliveira is the answer. The problem is Charles doesn't know how to get a match. Charles wasn't any better a year ago when he became the world champion than he was 2 years ago when he was just one of the boys. That's the truth. Charles isn't any worse now. Charles just didn't get recognized. He didn't know how to go get those matches. Finally, Tobin Ferguson gave him an opportunity. He used it and he did the most of it. But I'm sharing with you, Charles Oliveira, who has been radio silent, Charles can't promote a fight when he's incentivized to do it on a Saturday night. To get starched and to get beat and return to a main event is a science. There is a craft. There is a formula. To be a guy with really good skills who gets over and gets the shot and not understand that, hey, they didn't love having you here to start with. Now, this is cold. That's very mean, but you have to be very aware of where you're at. The organization is not disappointed now that I'm not their champion. Well, if that's true, then you weren't a very good champion. The organization should be in the back, hanging their head. My God, what do we do now? The king just went down. If you're getting anything less than that, you got to go to work. You got to go to work and you got to come back. And I think that Charles would be in a very good spot. All of the guys ranked right up there with Charles are guys that Charles has already beat. I'm not sure that the true number one contender, who's already proven I can beat the entire field, can I beat this guy? I'm not sure the answer isn't Charles Oliveira. How's he going to get the shot? Nobody's clamoring to see that. Nobody's going to clamor to see that until Charles starts banging the drum. So I don't know that that's going to happen. Now, let's just set Charles. I don't want to give Charles a hard time. I would never kick a man when he's down. I'm trying to lift him up, and I'm attempting to say what I believe to be true, that Charles Oliveira is probably the biggest threat to Islam. Now, let's set that aside. That's the guy that's not going to get the opportunity. Not next, not later, not if he wins 2 fights. He's not going to get the opportunity because there's a formula to it, and it does not involve showing up with your mouth closed and getting your hand raised a couple of times a year. Let's adversely look at the guy who did get the opportunity, Volkanovski. What similarities do you see between Volkanovski's approach and Charles's approach? You don't see very many, do you? You don't see a lot of commonalities. You see a very different approach in Volkanovski taking the world's biggest risk, which is to be a backup fighter and on less than 24 hours notice be put in with one of 2 killers and not care. You saw Volkanovski. We didn't ask Volkanovski to be a backup fighter, guys. We never asked him to do that. We never told Dana, by golly, this is what I'd like. And Dana didn't come up with the idea and call Volkanovski. Volkanovski came up with the idea and he told the rest of us. That's the way that happened. And he wouldn't stop telling us. Then he updated us on his hand, which I don't think he wanted to do. I think Volk would have rather kept that private, but he did want the world to know that was 8 weeks ago and I'm in great shape. As a matter of fact, I'm in great shape. I'm going to start releasing training footage of myself, looking big and strong and close to weight and showing you how well I'm doing. He started to tell his story. Then sure enough, he came to the airport, got on a plane, went to Fight Island, and did what he said he would do. And the next thing you know, Daniel Cormier is calling the kid in the ring. He's face to face, and it's announced Volkanovski versus Islam. And in addition to all that, we're going to come to Volkanovski's backyard to do it. How did Volk get there? What was different about Volkanovski's approach versus Charles's approach? And once you study that and you begin to see that, what can Charles do now? I think the closest thing we have to a number one contenders match, right? We're just making Volk the number one contender. Generally, there's a number one contenders match, and I think that we've got it. It's coming up in a couple of weeks. But the rankings would agree with me. Poirier versus Chandler, which also allows for fresh parity. I don't know that so much would be on Poirier and Chandler if Oliveira was still the champion. just because he crossed paths with him. I don't know that we're looking for rematches as much as we're looking for parity right now. But with Islam as king, boom, focus comes right back to that match. So what should Charles do? Should Charles be going out to the media and telling them, I get the winner? Should he be saying, I'm the backup fighter? Should he be getting on an airplane, flying out to New York? I mean, should he just copy Volkanovski perfectly? Or should he push that match to the side and do the exact Volkanovski recipe, just do it for the match that's going to take place in Perth? Should he become the backup fighter for Volk versus Islam? Should he doing everything right? Should he train? Should he get his paperwork in? Should he begin telling a story to the media through training footage? Should he lock down? Should he barrel down? I'm just asking you different questions. But there is a very different approach. I think Charles's argument to be number one contender would be very compelling, considering he's beaten absolutely everybody in the top 5. I think that's very compelling. But that's not going to start, and nobody's going to pick up the phone, and nobody's sitting on the second floor of the UFC trying to do all these different mathematical formulas to deduce who the top guy is. They're going to listen. They're expecting you to do that, and you guys do always do that, and eventually you do come up with an answer. And you come up with the right one every single time. So what does Charles Oliveira need to do to get your attention?